join me in welcoming Tim Goeglein?
Good morning, everyone. I know that I'm in the right place on a Friday morning if I'm sharing the same stage with Donna Hearn, Bill McClay, and John Dos Passos. And in the spirit of Phyllis Schlafly, yes? Yes. I must say, Donna, when I landed last night after living and working 30 years inside the Beltway, it was wonderful to be back in America again, here in St. Louis. I got off the airplane and I could smell freedom. It was so good to be here. ERA won't die, right? I live in the People's Republic of the Commonwealth of Virginia, which is being turned into Venezuela overnight. You've undoubtedly heard that we have total government controlled by the Democratic Party. I was in Richmond on Tuesday night, and every single pro-life measure, with no exception, beginning in 1974, was turned back this week. So the left, they move fast. If you are having a discussion about pro-life, pro-family, pro-religious liberty, all the things that we care about most deeply, in the course of 10 legislative days in Richmond, with no exception, it was all turned back. And you all know that if the Democrats get control this November at a federal level, within the first 2 weeks after the inauguration of whomever, they will introduce legislation in the Senate to expand the U.S. Senate by 4 votes. This is to say 2 votes for the District of Columbia for statehood and 2 votes for Puerto Rico. So they plan to fundamentally change the size and scope of our country. And, of course, they want to relitigate Brett Kavanaugh. They're busy as beavers thinking about that. And their other very important goal is to expand the Supreme Court. There is very serious talk about adding at least 2 members to the Supreme Court. So, the consequences of all the things we are believe this morning have real measure. We're in the bottom of the 4th inning and heading toward the bottom of the 5th, soon the bottom of the 9th. And this state really matters. The great Josh Hawley, thank you for sending him to us. His wife Ellen has been a guest on Focus on the Family, as you many in this room may know. What an extraordinary couple. I want to begin with 3 anecdotes. That's what we do at Focus on the Family. The wonderful thing about, by the way, I hope everybody here buys Bill McClay's book and that your 50,000 best friends buy it, because the question is there one book that every student should read? If that's the question, the answer is Land of Hope. So buy the book. It's extraordinary. Period. At Focus on the Family, we begin by saying, tell me a story. I'm going to share 3 anecdotes with you this morning that I think help to sum up the reason that Donna Hearn has been on this stage for 1,000 years. Okay, less than 1,000. Anecdote number 1. You all know the economist Walter Williams, the great Walter Williams. He's a great friend. And the late, great Robert Novak, Bob Novak, some of you may have read him 1,000 times, seen him battling for all we believe on television before he went to the land of glory. He had a spectacular conversion to Christianity. And as a result of a student who asked him a single question at the very end of a speech he gave at Grove City College. Mr. Novak, do you know where you're going when you die? And Bob said that question haunted him until his, as I say, remarkable conversion. And he, by God's grace, had become a very wealthy man and had sponsored a summer program in Washington for students. And Walter and I were invited to speak. And the group was remarkable. Young people from all over the District of Columbia. These are students, by the way, between 8th grade and high school. And Walter spoke first. And at the very end of his remarks, he mentioned that he had grown up with Bill Cosby in Philadelphia. And the second question was a young man saying, Dr. Williams, can you share with us what it was like to grow up in slavery in Philadelphia? Now, I'd like to confess to everybody here this morning that a hush fell over the room and that there was a sense of, oh my gosh. But with only a couple of exceptions, those students were eager to know how Bill Cosby and Dr. Williams lived in slavery in Philadelphia. Yes, wow. Something is wrong. Anecdote number 2. I was a press secretary for many years with Dan Coates of Indiana, who went on to become our ambassador to Germany and the director of national intelligence, etc. And a few weeks before his retirement, he was invited, he's a Wheaton graduate, and he was invited to speak at one of the great schools on the North Shore of Chicago. And in the course of his remarks, he mentioned Winston Churchill. And there was this odd silence across the room again, right? This is affluent, in air quotation marks, educated North Shore of Chicago. Overwhelmingly, those students had no idea who he was speaking about. How could that happen? 2 years ago, third anecdote, in behalf of Focus on the Family, this was an act of Providence, Donna, one of the most exclusive preparatory schools in the Washington suburbs was doing a panel, and I was invited to give the conservative view. And it turned out to be a very wonderful occasion, and at the very end of the panel, the headmaster of this school thanked all of us for coming, and in summation asked, you know, what is something that we might recommend that this very famous school might do? And Donna, I hope I gave a response that would please every soul here this morning. I said, why don't you think about putting an American flag in every classroom and a portrait of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln on every wall? Now, right, between the 40-yard lines, even in the era of identity politics, right, the headmaster's response was, and I'm quoting her, why would we do that? Right. I wish we had Land of Hope then. Right. After these anecdotes and traveling to many places in behalf of Focus on the Family, I came back from one particular trip, and I called my friend Craig Ostin, who works at Alliance Defending Freedom, which was born of Focus on the Family, ADF. And I said, Craig, for the last several months, I've been traveling, speaking, etc. Every single room, I can be in a room of 500 liberals, 500 conservatives, all the above campuses, etc. When I'm speaking with normal, regular Americans, almost always in the Q&A session, someone raises his or her hand and says the following: I've never been more concerned about my country. If they have children and grandchildren, they say, and I'm very concerned about the country that I'm leaving for them. And the third thing is the following: and I don't know what to do, right? Now, may I tell you, in a room of 5 million progressives, the answer is always the same. It's a recreation of the Great Society. That a combination in 21st century American parlance is that the Fortune 500, Silicon Valley, Wall Street, Hollywood, Broadway, and Washington will design the new America, right? What Justice Alito beautifully termed the new orthodoxy, right? We all know what that is. It's the newest iteration of heterodoxy, right? And the left says that this will be decided probably in Davos, right? Or at the Aspen Institute. And then it will be absorbed into the liberal ecology of the permanent bureaucracy in Washington and in all of the state capitals, in the law and the legal profession, the public schools, the better private schools, the preparatory schools. Of course, Hollywood, Broadway will do their part, the land of social media. And this is how it has always worked. Alas, as conservatives, we know that though that is their game plan, we will never, ever be able to design, nor should we even think about designing, such a way forward for America. The way forward for America is to begin at the most local level. It begins actually in our homes, you know, among marriages, families, and parents. You know, Bill's friend and mine, David Brooks, and if you forget everything I've said, and you probably will, David Brooks said something that is just remarkable, right? That too many young people are encouraged to foster what he calls the resume virtues, right? That we put our young people on an escalator, and as long as they are achieving the resume virtues, that somehow their self-worth is a lot more important to us, right? I was born in the last year of the baby boom. I'm here to confess to all of you that the resume virtues is how we were raised. David says this is a very dangerous trajectory. He says what really matters are the eulogy virtues. The eulogy virtues are who you really are. It's what people will really remember about you, right, when you pass on, right, to eternal life. This is a profoundly, in my view, conservative viewpoint, right? It is this Burkean sense of the living, the dead, and the not yet born, that we all form this idea of the community and what really makes life worth living. I am a hopefulist to the core. I believe very strongly with all of my being that the best days for America are ahead of us and not behind us, right? That's why we're all here today, right? We're here because we want something better, not because we're coming together to say, here are all the problems, right? The question is, what are the solutions? And by the way, my book, American Restoration, How Faith, Family, and Personal Sacrifice Can Help Heal Our Nation, this is not a book that says, here's the 15 solutions. Conservatives will never think, and nor should we think that way. American Restoration is well worth your reading and sharing and passing on, because it is 15 chapters, all of which begin with the word restoring, right? Restoring biblical values, restoring the Constitution, restoring the idea of marriage, right? Restoring civility in the public square, right? It's really okay to disagree agreeably in America. Gee, what an old-fashioned idea, right? But I want to conclude my remarks, if I may, Donna, by saying this. And I say this hand over heart. The most important chapter in this book is restoring education, right? That's ultimately why we're here. This is the organizing principle of our gathering. And on the plane last night coming in, I was reading an essay which I commend to you from the great Arthur Millick of the Heritage Foundation. I'm actually pleading with all of you to read this essay. It's called Preventing Suicide by Higher Education, right? I want to do a bookend to Dos Passos. This is Arthur. America's universities have been progressivism's most important asset, its crown jewel. For over a half century, Arthur says, they have served as the left's R&D headquarters and the intellectual origin or dissemination point for the political and moral transformation of our nation, especially through the sexual revolution and the identity politics revolution. He says universities have trained the new elites who have taken society's helms and now set its tone through the other institutions thoroughly dominated by the left. He says the mainstream press, mass entertainment, Fortune 500s, and tech companies. That's the revolution, right? I'll conclude, Donna and Bill, by saying the following. Our leaders are becoming very impatient with us. This is not Hollywood's country. This is not Washington, D.C.'s country. This is not the Fortune 500's country. This is not Silicon Valley's country. It's our country. And self-government is the heart of the American experience. The largest historic question, as we consider socialism and sexualization, what are the antidotes? The antidotes, I think, are the ones that we've spoken about this morning. Thank you so much for allowing me the time.